The king asked Esther, "What can I do for you, Queen Esther?" "Remember, I'll give you up to half of my kingdom." Unusual competition. The memory verse is from Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. It says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." The message is, God can use my life to influence others for good. Have you ever entered a competition? Did you win? Today's story is about a beauty competition with a very special prize. It may have happened like this. "Cousin Mordecai," said Esther, "did you hear? King Xerxes is sending his men to bring unmarried girls to the palace. He's looking for a new queen." "I heard," said Esther's cousin Mordecai, "but he's not sending for all the unmarried girls, just the pretty ones. I'm sure you'll be chosen." He smiled. "Oh, cousin Mordecai," said Esther, "I can't leave you. You've taken such good care of me since my parents died." "Don't worry about me, Esther," said cousin Mordecai. "It will be a good opportunity for you. Remember everything I've taught you, but no matter what happens, don't let anyone know you are a Jew or that you are my cousin." "But why, cousin Mordecai?" asked Esther, looking puzzled. "Because this is not our home. We are Hebrews. Although our people have lived in Persia for a long time, a lot of people don't like us. They want to get rid of us," said cousin Mordecai quietly. "I will do as you say," Esther nodded. "Don't look so sad, Esther," said cousin Mordecai. "A lot of other beautiful girls will be at the palace, but remember, beauty is as beauty does. Be kind to everyone. That's the best kind of beauty." When Esther was taken to King Xerxes' palace, she remembered what her cousin Mordecai had told her. There were a lot of beautiful girls at the palace. Some of them were not very nice, but Esther was kind to everyone. The king's helper, Haggai, noticed Esther. Haggai noticed Esther's kindness to others. He quickly chose her to begin beauty treatments. He also gave her special food. Then he gave her 7 servant girls and moved them all to the best part of the women's quarters. For a whole year, Esther received beauty treatments at the palace. She was bathed, oiled, and perfumed every day. Beauticians fixed her hair, the designers made new clothes and shoes for her. Haggai gave her anything she asked for. Meanwhile, Esther's cousin, Mordecai, walked back and forth near her rooms every day. He couldn't talk to Esther, and she couldn't talk to him. But they could see each other from far away. Cousin Mordecai wanted to make sure she was all right, but he didn't want anyone to know that they were related. If they did, they would know Esther was a Jew. One day, Haggai came to Esther smiling. "Esther," he said, "the king wants to see you." "Really? What should I do?" asked Esther. "Just be yourself," said Haggai, smiling. "I'm so nervous," said Esther excitedly. "I can't even think right now." "Esther, don't worry," said Haggai. "I think the palace people and the king are really going to like you." Haggai was right. Everyone liked Esther, especially the king. He liked Esther more than any of the other young women he had seen. So he made her his queen. Challenging choices. The memory verse is from 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. It says, "People look at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart." The message is, God helps me accept everyone. Have you ever been in a situation in which you did not know what to do? Queen Esther was. Read on to find out what she did. Mordecai was happy that Esther became queen, but he still did not want her to tell others that she was a Jew. One day when he was sitting at the palace gate, Mordecai heard two guards talking. They were angry with the king and were planning to kill him. Mordecai told Esther, who told the king. King Xerxes investigated Mordecai's report. It was true. The guards were arrested and hanged. All of this was written in the daily court record. About the same time, King Xerxes made Haman his second in command. King Xerxes ordered that everyone should bow down to Haman when they saw him. And everyone did, except Mordecai. One day, Haman noticed that Mordecai did not bow to him. He became very angry. Haman knew Mordecai was a Jew. He began thinking about ways to destroy Mordecai and all the other Jews. Haman decided to tell the king that a certain group of people were causing trouble and that they should be destroyed. He said that he would pay the people who destroyed them. He did not tell the king that the people were Jews. "Keep your money," the king said to Haman, "and do with the people as you please." When Mordecai heard the order, he put on rough clothes. He covered himself with ashes and cried at the city gate. Esther's servants told her how Mordecai was dressed. She sent good clothes for him to wear, but he refused to put them on. Esther sent Hathach, her servant, to talk to Mordecai. Mordecai told him everything that had happened. He even gave Hathach a copy of the order for Esther. Mordecai told him to ask Esther to go to the king and beg for mercy. Hathach hurried to give Esther the message. Esther sent a message back to Mordecai. "No one may go to the king's throne room without being called. If anyone goes and the king holds out his gold scepter, that person may live. But if the king doesn't, that person dies. And I haven't been called to the king for 30 days. Mordecai answered, "Just because you live in the king's palace, don't think that the people won't soon know you are a Jew. You can't escape. If you remain silent, help will come from another place. But you and the rest of our family will die. And who knows, you may have been chosen to be queen to save us at this terrible time." Esther sent one final message to Mordecai. "Get all the Jews in Susa together. Tell them not to eat or drink anything for 3 days and 3 nights. My servants and I will do the same. Then, even though it's against the law, I will go to the king, and if I die, I die." What will happen to Esther? Will she die? We'll learn more next week. Esther's Banquet. The memory verse is from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 6. It says, "In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." The message is, with God's help, I have the courage to do what is right. Have you ever been to a special dinner where everyone dressed in their best clothes? Esther planned a special dinner, a banquet, for the king and Haman. After 3 days and nights of not eating or drinking, Esther dressed in her prettiest clothes. Then she went in to see the king. She walked to the door of his throne room and stood quietly. When King Xerxes saw her, he smiled and held out his gold scepter. Esther walked toward him and touched it. "What can I do for you, my queen?" He smiled. "I'll give you up to half of my kingdom." "I've prepared a banquet for you and Haman today," replied Esther. "Will you please come?" "Of course, we'll be there," he said to Esther. Later, when Haman and the king were at her banquet, the king asked Esther, "What can I do for you, Queen Esther?" "Remember, I'll give you up to half of my kingdom." "Come back tomorrow with Haman for another banquet," she replied. "I will answer your question then." Haman left for home feeling very happy. Not everyone was invited to dinner with the king and queen. Then he saw Mordecai sitting at the gate. Mordecai did not bow to him. He didn't even stand up when he saw Haman. Haman was very angry, but he said nothing. When Haman arrived home, he bragged to his family and friends. "I have 10 sons. I have money and power. The king likes me. He gave me a great position. I am the most important person in the palace after the king. I am the only person Queen Esther invited to her banquet for the king. And she invited me back again tomorrow." Then he complained to them about Mordecai. "Everything would be perfect except for him," he said. "He's always sitting at the king's gate. He refuses to honor me." "Why don't you have him hanged?" someone suggested. Haman liked that idea, so he had his workmen build a hanging platform. That night, the king had trouble going to sleep, so he asked one of his servants to bring the daily court record to him. He read about the 2 guards who planned to kill him. Then he read about Mordecai's part in reporting those plans. "Mordecai saved my life. Did we reward him?" the king asked a servant. "No, sir," said the servant. "We never did." The next morning, Haman came before the king. He planned to ask for permission to hang Mordecai. But before he could say anything, the king asked him a question. What should be done to honor a man who has done a good thing? Haman thought the king was talking about him. So he replied, "Give him a royal robe and crown to wear. Let him ride through the streets on a royal horse. Let your servant announce, 'This is what the king does for a man he wants to honor.'" "I like that idea, Haman," King Xerxes replied. "Do everything that you've said for Mordecai right away. Don't leave anything out." Haman had to do what the king asked, but he was so embarrassed and ashamed that he hid his face all the way home. When he got there, he told his friends and family what happened. "You're losing all your power to Mordecai," they said. "You can't win. You're going to be ruined." But before Haman had time to answer, the king's servants arrived. They hurried Haman away to the second banquet Queen Esther had prepared. What would happen? What would Esther say? God would be with her, and God will be with you too. Cute. The memory verse is one of my favorite memory verses. It's from Esther, chapter 4, verse 14. It says, "Who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this?" The message is God leads us to opportunities to serve Him and His people. Have you ever wanted to know something and Mom or Dad says, "Wait a minute"? It feels as if you're going to burst with curiosity. That is probably how King Xerxes felt when he came to Esther's second banquet. King Xerxes and Haman were enjoying Esther's second banquet, but the king was curious. He wanted to know what Esther wanted, and why was she taking so long to tell him? "Queen Esther," he said, "what is it that you want? You may have up to half of my kingdom." "My king, if you truly care for me, please let me live, and let my people live too," she pleaded. "I have been told that we are all to be killed. If we were to be sold as slaves, I would say nothing, but we are to be destroyed." "What? Who has done this? Where is he?" the king shouted angrily. It is Haman, that man," said Esther, pointing at Haman. Haman stopped eating. He was frightened. He hadn't expected Esther to know. He could tell the king was very angry. The king slammed down his glass and stormed from the room. Haman knew the king would kill him, so he threw himself on Queen Esther to beg for mercy. Just then, the king walked back into the room. "Haman," he roared, "how dare you attack the queen, especially while I am still here?" As soon as the king said the words, the king's servants rushed forward. They covered Haman's face and took him away. One of the king's servants, Harbona, spoke to the king. "Haman has built a hanging platform in his own yard. He built it for Mordecai, the man who warned you about the plan to kill you." "Hang Haman on it," the king ordered. King Xerxes gave Queen Esther everything Haman owned. Esther told the king that Mordecai was her cousin. She explained how Mordecai had raised her. The king sent for Mordecai. He gave Mordecai the ring that he had taken back from Haman. That ring was a symbol of the power the king gave to Mordecai. Mordecai was now the king's assistant. Esther wasn't finished with her work yet. She went back into the king's throne room and knelt before him. The king held out his scepter to her again. Esther stood. She begged him to stop Haman's plan. "Please, my king, help us. Please do something to cancel Haman's orders," she cried. "I can't cancel that law because it was sealed with my signet ring," he said. "But I can do something. Have Mordecai tell my secretaries what to write. After they are done, he can seal the orders with the ring I gave him." Mordecai told the secretaries what to write. The Jews could fight back against anyone who tried to kill them. They could also take the property of anyone who tried. Soon the letters were done and sealed with the king's seal. The king's special messengers rushed to deliver them throughout the land. The Jews in Susa shouted for joy when they heard the new orders. Everywhere they were delivered, the Jewish people celebrated. Some other people even became Jews. From that day to this day, Jews have celebrated the Feast of Purim. For 2 days each year they celebrate. They remember how Esther and Mordecai served God, how they helped save God's people from death.